Hey, another movie for you guys. Now, this movie reviewing, I really was not looking forward to this movie whatsoever, to be honest with you guys. I just kind of wanted to get it out of the way, just so I could say I watched it, and if it was bad, then, it could be on my worst list, but I really didn't have many expectations for it, and that is the sort of sequel, sort of reboot of Rings. I really did not know how this was going to be. Look, I really did love the first movie, The Ring. I thought it's a very well done told thriller that has some really great characters as well as being a very good story about a mother and son. I thought that was an incredibly well done film. Naomi Watts gives a great performance in that movie, just a really good movie overall. I have not seen The Ring 2. I heard it's pretty bad. Most people really do give it shit and say it really was the downfall of the director who directed its career. I can't think of his name right now, but I did hear that it is kind of the downfall of his career. And Rings, on the other hand, I really did not think was going to be that great. Mainly because the fact that, one, I mean, it's been so long since we've had another The Ring, and that's not usually a good sign when a franchise is suddenly resurrected after many years. Two, it was getting delayed so much, and between all the delays and all the bad buzz about this movie, this really looked like a recipe for disaster, and surprisingly, it's actually not. Rings is not a terrible movie. It's not a good movie. It's okay. I actually thought Rings was an okay movie. It actually does have some good things about it, and it actually does try a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. However, the concept is fairly generic. It's pretty much the same exact thing that you saw from the first movie. A little bit different this time. We focus on this girl, Julia, and her boyfriend, Holt, has just gone off to college, basically. And, she tells him that they're going to keep in touch on Skype for like 6 days and, basically, every day. And after a few days, for some reason, he goes missing. She gets a report from this unknown girl played by Aimee Teegarden that he's missing. And it all is connected to this tape that if you watch it in 7 days, if you watch it 7 days after, you will die. And Julia does whatever she can to try to prove if this conspiracy is actually true and uncovers some disturbing details about stuff about the videotape that we really did not know, and that is the essential plot of Rings. But let's just get into this movie, starting off with the cast. Which together, I think the cast here, I wasn't expecting much. I really was not at all. The cast here was actually fairly good. I didn't really feel there was anyone bad in this movie. No one really gave a bad performance, I have to say. Matilda Lutz especially very much impressed me as Julia. Really not much to her character, I will say, but she definitely did do a good job with making this character somewhat interesting and somewhat nuanced. She wasn't too over the top. I didn't really think Julia was dumb in the movie. She did, what she could to try to prove this was actually true, and I thought she did a good job with that. There just wasn't much else to her character besides that, and the same with Alex Rowe as Holt. This is your typical, good-looking guy in a horror film that's really just there so one, girls will think he's attractive, but also just so, he'll have a few lines and things like that. There just really wasn't much else to him. I thought he was a good actor. I thought overall their chemistry definitely was believable. Like, you definitely felt these two, liked each other and that they were in a relation for a while. They did a good job with that. There just really wasn't much else to their characters, and I really wish they did, because the other characters they try to give a little bit more to. Johnny Galecki is by far the most confusing character in this entire movie, is Gabriel, because in the very beginning of the film, we actually see him watch the tape, and he seems completely unaffected by what's going on, because, we see it, and then a couple days pass, and it just doesn't, the timeline of this character doesn't really make a ton of sense. There's something off about it, but he did do a good job in this movie. He's definitely more of an expositional character. Like, he's there to give a lot of exposition, and he does a fairly good job with that. I was surprised by how good Johnny Galecki really is. I'm not a huge fan of The Big Bang Theory. There was a point when I was, but it's gotten very repetitive and very much the same, and I've never really found Johnny Galecki to be that great of an actor, but he was actually really good here. I like what he did in this movie. And then Vincent D'Onofrio, as usual, is great. I mean, I've never really seen Vincent D'Onofrio give a bad performance, and he really is very good in this film as a character of Burke. Not much else I can say, because there actually is a big twist that ruins his character, which I'm not going to talk spoilers in this movie review. I just don't really feel like doing it. And I don't really think you guys care either, but I did like where they went with this character. I thought where they went it was interesting. Definitely, it's quite surprising when the revelation happens with his character that it does. But for the most part, I thought he did a good job. Though I'm not gonna lie, I did feel he was a bit wasted. I mean, when you have someone like Vincent D'Onofrio, who's such a competent actor and has been in so many great roles and has basically dominated almost every role he's in, except for maybe Jurassic World. I really didn't like his character in that. He just, doesn't really compare to those other roles. Like, he definitely does do his Vincent D'Onofrio thing, where he's very gruff and very, tough and things like that, but I just wanted a little bit more from him. But I thought overall he did a good job. No one's really bad in this movie. I think everyone, for the most part, did a good job, and definitely the acting is probably the best aspect of this entire thing. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, which here's where we start to get to some of the more problematic issues of this film, because the directing here by Javier Gutierrez is really not bad. I thought for the most part he did do a good job directing this film, definitely. But I will say, if you haven't seen the other Rings films, you're not really gonna understand this movie, because yes, they do try to kind of reintroduce this concept, but they also assume you've seen the other ones. They don't need to over explain everything. They don't really explain a lot of what's going on, which was a little bit maddening to me, because this is a movie that I think should stick out as, its own movie, and I didn't really understand why he decided to not do that. And I thought his tone wasn't exactly well executed. I didn't really even find this movie scary. I'm gonna be honest. There really wasn't anything that scary about it. There were some scenes that honestly were really cringy, like the opening plane scene. Holy shit, that was a bad scene. And the movie gets off to a bad start. Like, it actually took a while for me to be like, all right, this isn't terrible. The first few scenes are really, really, are horrifically bad, honestly. I mean, they're really not great. But I did think that Javier Gutierrez did do a good job directing this thing. The screenplay is where we get to my main concern here, because even though I did find this movie to be somewhat okay, this movie is extremely convoluted, and I don't really think knows what it wants to be. It starts off, and it's your typical, basic, movie where you got these two, and, it's kind of like a rescue mission with tracking them down. But then Aimee Teegarden's character dies very quickly on, and that's not really a spoiler because it's happened in every Rings movie. The first Ring, I remember her friend died, and they kind of try to parallel that here. Really does not work that well. Then we get into this character of, of Gabriel, and like I said, he gives a lot of exposition, a little too much exposition, because they actually try to develop Samara a little bit more in this movie, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. I don't really know why it took them 3 movies to really develop her character. It really kind of feels wasted, and it really doesn't go with a lot of the film. And because of them, having so much of their character, you don't really feel threatened by her. Like, you don't really feel like Samara is this evil person. Like, they kind of try to humanize her a bit, and I just don't really feel like it works. Samara, in my opinion, should be an unknown entity. Like, she should be someone who's just scary. We don't know, what she wants, but she's unknown, and then we could see Julia try to get out of it. But Julia, after a few minutes, she didn't really feel like the main character. It felt like they were trying to make Samara's backstory the main thing, and that just didn't really work as well as it could have. I think they could have done a bit more with diving deeper into her character, but still trying to keep her as that very ominous type of presence that she's had this, for the first movie. I just didn't really feel like Samara was much of a presence in this movie. Kind of felt more like she was the hero, like they want us to think that she was gonna save Julia, but obviously that doesn't make much sense. So I really couldn't tell what they were trying to do there, and especially when a certain twist happened with Vincent D'Onofrio that connects it to Samara's past. I really don't know where they were trying to go with this. Like, it was very confusing. Were they trying to get us to sympathize with her, or were they trying to get us on board with what she did? I just couldn't really figure that out. That really did not work that well for me, I have to say. And the writing in general, I did like the main story. Like, I did like the story with her trying to track down Holt. I thought that was overall interesting. But once they got into the backstory, I'm not gonna lie, I got bored quite fast because I just didn't know where they're gonna go. It's interesting, definitely. I think some of it definitely is interesting, but it goes on far too long. They give way too much exposition, and I just felt that it wasn't bad that they did it. I just felt it was too late. 3 movies in, we don't need all this exposition about Samara. We already know a lot about her character. We already know how scary she can be. We already know how intimidating she is. We don't need you to humanize her character. It just didn't really work. And I know that happens a lot now, but it didn't really work in this way. Usually I'm on board when they do that, but like I said, Samara should be an unknown entity, and I just don't really know why they wanted to humanize her. That really did not work that well for me. Other than that, the screenplay is okay. I did feel there were a lot of narrative issues. Like, it didn't really feel like this was happening in just the time span of 7 days. It just felt very impractical in that regard. But again, not going to fault the movie too much for that. The cinematography here is fine, but you can tell the movie was made a long time ago. Like, this movie was announced, I believe, back in like 2008, possibly. I mean, I've heard about this movie in development for a long, long time, and you definitely do feel like it's taking them a while to put this out because it just doesn't feel current enough. All the technology just feels very dated, and especially videotapes. I mean, where are you going to find videotapes? Why would anyone watch a videotape anymore? Does anyone even have a VCR? I have a VCR. My VCR stopped working like 3 years ago, so this movie really needs to like get on board. You know, I think it should have been digital file. I think it would have made a lot more sense if they did that. That didn't really work for me. And the visuals here are fine. I didn't really see anything wrong with the visuals. Like, Samara still looks scary. I will definitely say that. But the cinematography wasn't really scary. There were a few jump scares that really don't work. There weren't too many jump scares, but there definitely were a few that didn't really work. Score is fine. Editing, I think, is kind of all over the place. I definitely will say the movie is quite convoluted when it comes to the editing. And then the ending of this movie. This movie actually does end on quite an interesting cliffhanger, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually interested. I kind of want to see where they're going to go with it. It's a little bit weird, and it comes out of left field, but it worked for the most part. I actually liked where they went with this cliffhanger. I thought that they did a good job with shocking us, and the scope of it, it definitely did feel like a presence. Like, it definitely did feel like this is going to affect whenever they make the next movie, which I don't know if there's going to be one, because, like, no one's really seen this movie. But surprisingly, Rings was a much better movie than I anticipated it to be. I really didn't think it was going to be good at all, but it actually was somewhat good. Even though it was a very convoluted story, I will give it points for trying. I will definitely say I like that they tried. I like they tried to do something different. I like that they didn't just try to copy the first movie. No, they tried to give Samara a backstory. They tried to do more with her as a character. They tried to connect it to this whole thing going on with D'Onofrio. And did it work? Not exactly, but at least they did try to do something a little bit different. And at least the movie wasn't terrible. Like, especially after all the reshoots, I was actually kind of impressed with the way it turned out. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to fault this movie for that, because in general, it's a very forgettable film. It's not really something that I'd watch again, and the characters were very, very bland. Even though I did care about the story going on, I didn't really care about the characters. There really wasn't anything that original going on, and I am overall going to give Rings a 2.5 out of 5 or a C. So overall, guys, my review of Rings. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Loved your thoughts in it. Do you like where they went with Samara's backstory? Did you like the ending to this movie? Just love to hear your thoughts and all that. Are you a fan of the Rings franchise in general? I think if you're a fan of the franchise, you still should see this movie. Definitely. I mean, if you made it this far and you've seen The Ring 2, I think this is definitely better, like, made better. I haven't seen The Ring 2. Just from what I've heard, this one just sounds a little bit more competent, even though I think it's a little bit more confusing as to what's really going on. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the Vampire Diaries. I have 3 episodes to watch, the Vampire Diaries, 4 episodes actually, and I'll try to review all of them tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, but I'll try to, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.